Hey guys, so apologies for the lack of posting over the past week, but I have been so busy just working my absolute butt off for some really exciting future projects. So I literally had no time to film. Today's advice video is going to be on anxiety, and before I get started I just need to apologise for the absolute state of my hair today. If you notice any little blue bits in there, oh yeah, we've got one there, it is because my Halloween hair colour spray still has not washed out after about 10 to 15, maybe even 20 shampoos. So yeah, I'm just rocking the blue streaks. Anyway, I asked you guys to ask me questions on the topic of anxiety. So I'm going to start from the beginning and answer the questions on kind of how you know you have anxiety. So one of the questions is, how do you know when anxiety is happening? The anxiety that I'm gonna refer to goes beyond just that normal feeling of anxiety. Obviously everyone gets anxious, like before an interview, before a test, if you're going to perform on stage, but when it becomes an actual issue, an actual potential mental health problem, is when it's really affecting your life. I still struggle every single day with it, so I kind of got used to the feeling. But for me, like when I know it's happening, is I can feel it like physically. So I tend to feel it a lot in my chest, like I get a really tight chest, my heart beats fast, you might get like sweaty palms, and you might not necessarily be able to concentrate on one thing. I think generally when you start to notice that it's really taking over your life, you might be overthinking things, you might have this constant feeling of dread, which is what I have. I just think that everything's going to be the end of the world. I just get really anxious about for example, like getting places on time, like even taking clothes back that I've ordered online. Like I'm like, oh my god, like I need to send them back, otherwise I'm gonna lose all this money. Just like general things in your daily life that appear to be a bigger issue than they actually are. Like if you said it to someone normal, they would be like, why are you worrying about that? If I'm going somewhere, I'll have all these thoughts going through my head, like where am I going to park, how am I going to act when I see them, what if this happens, what if I get lost, like just all these silly questions in your head. There are a lot of questions on how to explain your anxiety to someone who doesn't know much about it or doesn't understand. I think generally the best way is to just describe how it feels and use kind of phrases and words that they can kind of relate to, because the difficult thing is with anxiety, it is like the feeling of it and all these thoughts, like you have to experience it to know what it feels like, so it's really hard to explain it to someone else. One really common thing is that people think that I'm being really rude in, like for example, social situations. If I'm being really quiet, they take that as rudeness, but that's just me being really anxious. I think if they're your close friends, then hopefully they'll learn to understand. And if you let your close friends know different scenarios that you find quite difficult, so for example if you say, this is why I do this when we're going out to the shops, because it is something that I find really difficult with my anxiety, and just kind of explaining basically how it feels in your head. Like I mentioned before, to me it just feels like everything is the end of the world and it is this huge task. It's just complete irrational thoughts. You feel like it's real, even though you know that if you don't go to the shop today and buy your favourite cereal, that's not the end of the world. Okay, so the next question is, when did you first have anxiety and what did it feel like? So this is really weird, because obviously at the time I didn't know that what I was experiencing was anxiety. I remember that around the time that I started getting anxiety, I started the pill, and so I put my anxiety down to that. So I'd get a lot of kind of like shortness of breath, and I like couldn't take like a deep enough breath, and I'd get really panicky. I was having panic attacks but I wasn't aware, and I would get really nervous in certain situations, and I'd be kind of like, oh, I'm the only one who's like this, like all my friends are so confident, and things worried me, like school seemed like a huge deal, like it seemed so serious. Everything was so serious. But yeah, anyway, I seem to think that it had a link with my pill, and I remember actually asking my doctor if the pill was causing me this feeling, because I didn't know what it was. And then obviously when I went to the doctors for kind of like depression and anxiety, in the end I realised that it couldn't just be my pill that was making me feel like this. I think probably when I was about 14, 15, when things started getting difficult, that's when I started feeling anxious. I guess it was kind of around the same time that like self-harming started, and I got involved with boys, and you know, I think that's the thing, you experience the emotion but it's kind of like times 100. Okay, so the next question is, how do you get help? And I'm going to link that in with, when did you first get diagnosed? First got diagnosed I think when I was 16, 17. It was all like depression and anxiety together. And as for how you can get help, first thing I would say is go to your GP. I know some of you may have had bad experiences with GPs, but honestly you just have to keep trying. Also, another question that I always get asked is like, you don't want your parents to find out, so do they have to come? And the answer is no. Like, unless you are deemed a serious risk to yourself, your doctors won't disclose that information to your parents, so you can go alone. You can just make an appointment and just let them know how you're feeling and just kind of how much it's affecting your life. Okay, so there are so many questions on how to deal with anxiety, which I think is probably the key with anxiety, is how to conquer it, because it's all about kind of not letting it take over you. So first of all, tips for conquering general anxiety, just day-to-day anxiety, and dealing with these kind of irrational thoughts that come into your head. I don't really want to start with this and say like this is number one what you should do, but in terms of ways to help, obviously one of them is medication, and there are lots of different types of medication for anxiety. I personally am on a medication called propranolol, which is basically a beta blocker. And what a beta blocker does is basically kind of blocks, as the name suggests, kind of all the adrenaline and things like that. It's actually used in other medical cases that are not mental health related, but basically because with me the physical symptoms are my biggest issue, which feel, I guess, more out of control than my thoughts. That's why I'm on them. There are other anxiety medications out there, but it's not really good to be on them for a long period of time with depression when they just give you like antidepressants when you go to them for the first time. They don't really tend to do that with anxiety, so it's definitely better to obviously work on like the root of the anxiety, because obviously your mind and body with the anxiety is all linked. So my day-to-day tips would be, number one, this is a really simple one and I kind of didn't really listen to it until really recently, and then I've really seen and felt the difference that it's made, and that is being healthy. Getting the right amount of sleep, eating well, looking after your body, and making sure you have time to yourself. Having a good night's sleep and stuff. It really helps, because I find like, obviously I have anxiety around sleep, like if I don't get to sleep or if I wake up late in the morning. What I find really helps is just creating that nice, calm, safe place in your bed. So I really love candles, so I've bought loads of like really nice relaxing scents which I like to burn just before I go to sleep. I often exercise around probably 6-7 o'clock. It helps de-stress me and tires me out. I bought this amazing memory foam mattress topper, which is just the best thing I've ever spent money on. A healthy lifestyle is the basis for like tackling anxiety. So then obviously throughout the day you're gonna face different situations, and what I find helps for me is to write things down, because sometimes I feel like it's all kind of just out of control, and then that's when I get anxious. But if I have a clear idea of what I'm doing in the day and what my to-dos are, then I feel like I have everything more under control. So either the night before or just in the morning I'll make a list of my kind of schedule for the day, and then what I need to do. But also obviously it is important to plan in time for yourself. So doing relaxing things like taking a really nice bath, watching your favourite film, spending time with your pets, painting your nails, just things like that. Then as for when you feel anxious and you want to tackle it, I have a few different methods that help me. One of them is breathing. Obviously when you get anxious your breathing gets faster. I'm not that fond of mindfulness, but it is good to do once in a while. Mindfulness is basically just focusing on the kind of here and now and what you can see, smell, hear, taste, feel, and then if kind of judgments or other thoughts come into your mind, just imagine them kind of floating away or drifting away or whatever scenario you want in your head. Just focus on your breathing. Sometimes I like to go like kind of relax from either the bottom of my body to the top or the top of my body to the bottom. Make sure you relax your jaw when you feel anxious, because one thing I've always noticed is that you really tense up around here, so I always consciously, I'm like, okay, relax your jaw, Maddie. Also with the breathing, one thing I do is like draw a triangle, so like breathe in for 2, breathe out for 2, breathe in for 2, or kind of take deep breaths and go through the alphabet and name a fruit that begins with every letter or an animal. Just little things like that to kind of distract yourself. I used to have little things to kind of like squeeze when I would feel really anxious, and those were actually really helpful. I really want to get some of them back, but basically I ended up breaking just like all of them because I squeezed them so hard. They're those little, I don't know how to describe them, but they're like not jelly, and then you can like hit them and some of them flash, but I'd like squeeze them too hard and some of them had like goo and beads inside them and they would just explode. But maybe something like soft, or I know some people have, what are they called? You'll know what I mean if you see it. I might find an image and insert it on the screen here, but they're like twisty things, just something that you can play with your hands, and you can take that like out and about, have it in your pocket, play with it, squeeze it, whatever. Something fluffy you might find comforting. Even like stroking your dog is, I mean, there's been studies to show that that really helps. In terms of actually challenging your thoughts, one thing I always tell myself is not the end of the world. I have this feeling of constant dread, like someone is waiting with a knife next to your heart, like ready to pounce constantly. It just feels like that, like something's gonna happen but it hasn't, so you're like just constantly on edge. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? When I talk to my psychiatrist and I say a certain situation and how I felt, he'll always ask me, so what's so bad about that? And in the end, when you go through it, you actually can't answer, like you can't really explain why I say the feeling of embarrassment would be so horrendous for you, because in the end it's not actually, it's just your mind being an absolute idiot. If you let anxiety stop you from going out and doing things, then you're letting it win, and we can't let anxiety win. It's all kind of like about building up things that you can do. So when I was really ill, I wouldn't leave the house. I couldn't. I would feel like everyone was looking at me and talking about me and stuff, which is weird because then at the same time with depression I was like literally like zombie-like and I didn't care, but then my anxiety did, so it's such a weird kind of combination. I found that my way of leaving the house was to go with my mum, because I always felt safe going places with my mum. We would do things that I would enjoy, so to get me out the house, like she was literally like, we can do whatever you want, because she took time off work to look after me, which is just amazing. Like she was just absolutely great. So she'd be like, where do you want to go today? And I'd be like, oh, let's go to Winchester and let's go shopping, or let's go and do this. I used to love getting stuff for my scrapbook and stuff, so we go like craft shop shopping and just things like that. Then I guess in the future when I went and did those with a friend or by myself, I'd already done that before. I think that's kind of the key with anxiety, it's the fear of the unknown. So you never know what's going to happen, but I guess if I'm like comfortable with it and if I know what I'm doing, then I'm not as anxious. And then went to various family occasions which were like big events for me, but again mum was amazing, and like we went shopping for an outfit for them and she just made sure that I was comfortable in the situation. And then I started seeing friends. So with friends I would get them to usually come over to my house, because I found that And I still find that my bedroom is like the safest place for me. So we just spend time, watch films, catch up and whatnot. And then when I felt able to, I started driving again because I had a break from driving for a while. And I would go places with friends, so I'd always have someone with me. And then I moved on to going to actually driving and meeting friends. Ever since then, I've just carried on kind of challenging myself with new situations. Also, trains were a huge issue for me. I still get anxious around like the kind of timings of trains, but because I do it so much, I don't get as anxious. I find that like obviously the more you do something, the more chilled out that you become. So yeah, then I started getting trains and visiting friends, which for me was like huge progress. And then, I mean, I've driven so many places over the past few months. I've driven to Birmingham, Nottingham, Norfolk. I drove to Cardiff at the weekend by myself. I would never in a million years have dreamt that I would be able to do that. So yeah, I promise you, if I can do it, then you can definitely do it. Okay, so I have a lot of questions on how to stop or help panic attacks. The first thing is, I know you might not even be able to, but if you can, if you're with someone, let them know. If you know them well enough, then I would definitely suggest in general, like say, oh, if this happens, this is what you should do. For me, I think finding a safe place is really important. Mine tend to be triggered off a lot when I'm in public places, like for example when I'm shopping. I've just found that my safe place is Costa. So anytime I'm out, I will always make sure that I locate a Costa. And if something does happen, then I will go to Costa. Just getting anywhere out of the crowd, sitting down, go get a drink or whatever. Hopefully if your friend realises that that's going on, then they can just be like, okay, come on, we're going to Starbucks. Tip number 2, I think it's very hard to think rationally in that situation. So things that help me are kind of distraction techniques. So it's like the opposite to mindfulness. Don't focus on what's going on at that moment. Focus on something else. So you've got to think about nice things. I tend to think about holidays abroad and just think about where I'd like to go and imagine like lying on a sandy beach, stuff like that. Or I'll think about just things that make me happy in general and make me smile, like my puppy, my family. Really simple. Again, you can use the method of kind of going through the alphabet and naming a fruit that begins with each letter. If you've got access to a TV, you might want to watch the TV or listen to some music, whatever you find helps you the most. With panic attacks, breathing is one of the main components. So you need to slow your breathing down. If you've got a friend with you, they can be like, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. I guess one of the most important things is to kind of not fight it and be angry at it. Just ride it out and do all that you can to help it subside. Hi, you want to come in my video? Oh! Hello everybody! Let's talk about anxiety! Lola, do you have any tips for anxiety? No? No, but you're very good at helping me with anxiety, aren't you? In the grand scheme of things, what has helped me most is kind of CBT and talking to psychiatrists and going through different like methods that are going to help me. My most recent psychiatrist is so helpful. I always go in there and say to him like, I'm just fed up of feeling like everything's the end of the world, but he's made me realise that that's not out of my control, like it's down to me and I can overcome it and I can conquer it. Okay, so the next question is to do with school. I had quite a few on kind of how to deal with panic attacks in school and how can you let a teacher know that you need to leave class if you're having an anxiety attack without having to explain why. I definitely think that if you are having a panic attack or if you're feeling particularly anxious in a class, you should be allowed to leave and find a safe place and calm down, because you're no good in a lesson where you can't concentrate and when you're feeling anxious. Making your teachers aware, I think, is just the most important thing. Just speak to them and let them know what your situation is so you can have like a kind of agreement. So even like a signal that you can give them if you want to leave the class. If you are seeing anyone like CAMHS, it might be a good idea to get them to write a letter to suggest this if they think it's a good idea too. You need to make school as safe and nice an environment as you can. So I'm just going to do the last few questions and I'm going to kind of link these all together because I've got a few questions with kind of different scenarios on how their anxiety is affecting them. So one of them is, what do you do when you really don't want to leave the house? Another is, my anxiety is slowly getting worse. I'm in year 11 at school, but I'm finding it really hard to go to school. I don't tell anyone how I feel because I feel everyone thinks I'm stupid, therefore I just go to school and put up with it even though it's so hard. What would you do? How to explain to your employer that sometimes you're late or absent to work because of how bad your anxiety is before a shift. With situations like these, I like to try and use a method called acting opposite. And you can probably guess what that is just from the name. I first came across this when my support worker used to always come to my house and literally drag me out of bed. Like, I'm not even kidding. I used to hide in bed. She told me about acting opposite and she said that this is what I need to try and do. So when you're feeling like you can't leave the house or you can't go into school, go and do it. It's difficult, but if you think, okay, I'm doing the method where I'm acting the complete opposite to what I want to do. So if I want to lay in bed, then I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to get dressed. And I promise you, you will feel so proud of yourself. But obviously I know that is difficult. So I think in general you have to make a scenario as desirable as possible to kind of leave the house for. So if it's school, you just need to think about the good things. Like, you're going to get to spend time with your friends. Obviously I know you're not going to be excited to learn, but learning is not only distracting, but it's also like really stimulating. It really does help you. Even if you don't want to be there, the fact that you are there, you should just be so proud of yourself. And also, if you were sat at home, you would be overthinking all of your horrible thoughts and you'd make yourself feel worse. But the fact you've got up and you've managed to go into school and you're actually doing something and you're around people is just the best thing ever. Try as hard as you can to challenge yourself, and maybe you don't go in every day to school, and that's fine. Maybe challenge yourself to go in 3 days a week and then the other 2 days you get your work sent home. Definitely make the school aware of your situation and hopefully they'll be understanding. As for explaining to your employer about turning up late to work, your employer probably doesn't even realise how amazing it is that you actually went into work after having such a difficult morning. It is worth speaking to them if you can, or getting your parents to speak to them, I don't know, or getting a note from your doctor, anything just so that they know that you're not being a bad worker. Just like a broken arm might affect you at work in different ways, mental illness and anxiety can affect it in different ways. It's just so difficult because so many people don't understand this. So guys, I hope that this video helped some of you. I just want to end by saying that if you are struggling with anxiety, if you're not already getting help, then there is help out there. Just please go to your doctors and they will let you know what services you can access in your area. And if you are getting help at the moment, keep working at it because I promise it does get better. So yeah, do give this video a thumbs up if you did like it, and let me know any suggestions for future advice video topics. And I will see you all very soon. Bye!